All right, welcome back to the Young and Angry podcast. This is episode 2, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about some of the government waste and things that you might not know about where your tax money goes, what it goes toward, and basically how much the U.S. government wastes on this kind of thing. Stay tuned for more. All right, so I've been doing a little bit of research on some of the government employees, how much they make, how many government employees there are, and a few other things that I've been hearing a lot about for all my life of how much government employees make, but I decided to do a little bit of digging to see what the actual numbers were, especially since the government seems to love spending money on anything under the sun, and they always spend a lot of money on things that don't need to cost as much as they seem to. So I did a little bit of digging here, and I found from Senate.gov, we've got the Congressional Research Service that brings up all the congressional salaries and allowances. So I started reading through it, and I was surprised about some of the stuff. Let's see. Well, for starters, actually over here on work.cron.com, according to them, this country, the United States, has 21,656,000 government employees. That's a lot of employees for the government. I assume they don't specify, but that does, I'm assuming, include military, so that makes up a good chunk of it. But even still, even if half of it was military, that's still 11 million government employees. It seems kind of high in my opinion. Maybe it's not. Average income, though, for this 21 million government employees is an average of $51,340 per year, or about $24.69 an hour. So I went ahead and did the math on that. I was kind of curious. It comes out for the 21 million government employees, they spend $1.1 trillion on government employees in general, salaries per year. $1.1 trillion on salaries. That's a lot. And according to, thebalance.com, 2019, the actual total U.S. tax revenue was $3.46 trillion in 2019. So they're spending almost exactly a third of the total tax revenue on government employees. That seems kind of high in my opinion, especially if you go back to this Senate.gov research that I was looking at, when you look at the income of some of these government employees, it's just kind of insanely high for something that they don't really need these senators and representatives doing stuff all the time, because they don't do stuff all the time. They're actually planning on a 1 month recess next week or whenever it is. It's like, so you only work 11 months out of the year and you still get paid. But this just kind of shows how out of touch the government and so many of its employees are with the average person. So on here it says compensation for senators, representatives, delegates, and the resident commissioner of Puerto Rico, for some reason, get paid $174,000 a year. So they're salaried at $174,000 a year, and they don't have to do anything else. They don't have to do anything, and a lot of them don't do anything. They basically just sit there and vote on, or sometimes they don't even vote. There's plenty of examples of that. And they get paid $174,000 a year. And that doesn't include other expenses, which we'll get into in a minute. So $174,000 per year for the senators, representatives, delegates, and the resident commissioner of Puerto Rico. But the Speaker of the House, their salary is $223,500, and the president pro tempore of the Senate and the majority and minority leaders of the House and the Senate all make $193,400 a year, so about another $20,000 on top of everyone else. Not really sure why they really need that much more money for doing almost the exact same job. Kind of seems pointless in my opinion. And then they've got the outside earned income limits for all of the senators, representatives, and everyone. And in 2016, apparently they were limited to $27,500 of outside income outside of their official responsibilities, even though we all kind of know that that's not exactly the case, that they're only making $27,500 outside of their $174,000 salaries. Good example of where they're getting so much of this extra money from. It's kind of interesting because they make $174,000 a year, and they're allowed $27,500 in additional outside income. But then if you go to the net worth of some of the current members of Congress, actually number 2, let's find out who number 1 is real quick. Number 1 is Kelly Loeffler, Republican from Georgia. Net worth of $500 million. Okay, kind of seems strange. Greg Gianforte, don't know how to pronounce that, Republican from Montana, $135 million net worth. And then good old Nancy Pelosi here, $120 million net worth. So where is this other hundreds of millions of dollars coming for some of these people? So quick side note, after a little bit of research, the top 2, Kelly Loeffler and Greg Gianforte, the 2 highest net worth politicians on here, apparently they were involved in businesses and other things that made them the majority of their money, so they're kind of irrelevant in this whole discussion. But Nancy Pelosi's number 3 with $120 million net worth, and at least according to her Wikipedia page and some of the other information that I could find on here, she really didn't do anything before politics. That's really all I can see on here, is that she was involved in politics pretty much her entire life since she was young. And she's got $120 million net worth. Anybody else find that kind of strange? I kind of do. But that's just me. But anyway, moving on down this document from Senate.gov, we move down into the health and life insurance provisions, which everyone knows that all the federal congressmen, senators, all of them have pretty much the golden package when it comes to this kind of stuff. So according to this, it appears from what they're saying is that health insurance or health care in general for all the politicians, senators, and congressmen is free for emergency medical assistance provided by the Office of the Attending Physician for members of Congress, justices of the Supreme Court, staff, and visitors. But then additional services, which they don't really specify what that means, but I'm assuming that pretty much means general health insurance for whatever you want, is a whopping $611 annually in 2018 for these senators and congressmen. So $611 for a year, which works out to about $51 or whatever a month. And then according to ehealth.com right here, in 2020, the average national cost for health insurance is $456 for an individual or $1,152 for a family per month. So senators and congressmen who are making $175,000 a year, before their expenses, which are also a lot of which is covered. So they're making $175,000 a year of your tax money, and they pay a whopping $611 a year for additional medical services that aren't even really necessary because they already get emergency medical services for free. And you would be paying as an individual $456 times 12. So roughly $5,500 for one person, or $13,800 for a family, where they're paying $611 per year for health insurance. That doesn't seem exactly fair, that they're getting probably better health insurance than you are and paying less than a phone costs every month, and you're paying, what is that? That's almost over 10 times as much roughly for health insurance as an individual. But moving on from health insurance, next up on their little list is the Members Representational Allowance, the MRA, which is for supporting personnel, office expenses, travel to the District of Columbia, D.C., and mail. Surprising how expensive mail can be for these people. So per member of Congress and everyone else, representatives, so per person, per member representative, is $944,000 a year in 2017 for personnel. And they say that's just for personnel. And then they say office expenses vary because of distance from the District of Columbia. And then there's pretty much everything just says varies. So you know that means that the number is too big. They can't fit it on a page. And then we move on to the next section. That's the Senator's official personnel pay, which has this stupid acronym that goes along with it. But the Senator's expenses for these things, which is higher than all the other representatives apparently, don't really know why, but the average allowance, it says, is $3.4 million per year for the senator's official personnel and office expenses account, including personnel, office expenses, and mail. So $3.5 million per person. I mean, fly coach. Why do you need $3.5 million to fly around? You're an elected official. You're not supposed to be flying around on a G6 plane all the time to get to and from Washington. That's kind of ridiculous. If they were so concerned about the environment and all this other stuff and financial responsibility, take coach. It'd be like $200 to fly. Even if you flew first class, it's still probably at least 10 to 15 times cheaper to fly first class than it is to rent your own plane, unless they own the plane, and that's just more money that they waste. But a chartered plane flight across the country is like $20,000 one way. And then the document goes on. They talk about a bunch of other little expenses. It just more money in more places for basically no reason, for things that really aren't all that important, and that could be, the price could be brought down considerably because it doesn't need to be that expensive for these people. But this one really caught my eye. The furniture and furnishings in state offices. Each senator is authorized $40,000 for state office furniture and furnishings for one or more offices. $40,000. And that's if the space is less than 5,000 square feet. And then it increases per 1,000 square feet by every 200 square feet of office space. So, I mean, I know plenty of people that live in 1,000 square foot homes. So they're saying, what, $5,000 in furniture for a 1,000 square foot home? Seems kind of ridiculous for some couches and chairs. Just my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong. But pretty much this entire budget overview from Senate.gov here pretty much just highlights what I've been saying for quite a while. Not on the podcast, obviously. But the fact that the U.S. government and most of its employees anyway, are so out of touch with how the rest of the country works, that it really highlights their $1,200 stimulus package that's supposed to be coming up here in the next couple weeks. How they think that $1,200 for people who aren't working because they lost their jobs due to COVID, and $1,200 is like it's gonna do anything. It barely covers anything. It's a butterfly band-aid on a gunshot wound. It's better than nothing, but it's not like it really helps. Everyone that I've talked to, they were like, yeah, it's great if you're working. If you still have a job, then yeah, $1,200 is a sweet little bonus, but it doesn't actually help if you lost your job. $1,200 for 3 months really doesn't help at all. You're not going to keep your rent. You're not going to pay rent you're not going to be able to pay rent for 3 months on $1,200 most likely. I'd be shocked if you could pay $400. If you're paying $400 a month in rent and it's a nice place, good for you. You're definitely winning. But for the vast majority of people, $1,200 for 3 months doesn't really cover anything. It's not going to cover their food, rent, car insurance, gas, health insurance, everything else that people have to pay for. $1,200 doesn't cut it. That's almost literally every job in California pays more than that because of their $15 an hour or $13.50, I think it is right now, minimum wage. That pays more than $1,200 a month after taxes. So $1,200 a month for every 3 months, it's not helping all that much. More people you're doing better if you're on unemployment right now with their cool federal stimulus thing where they were paying $600 a week extra. That was a way better deal than the $1,200 in their stimulus package. But a lot of people, even the people that were still working, were kind of getting screwed with that $600 a week unemployment thing. I would have loved to go on unemployment because combined with what my regular unemployment would have been plus the $600, I would have been making way more money on unemployment than I did actually working. And that's messed up. And then they're even talking about no federal income tax or federal payroll tax for the rest of the year. I'm not exactly sure if the government really knows where all of this magic money comes from. I'm not sure if they realize that the federal government and all of the government is basically funded by your tax money. So what have they done? They've spent $3-ish trillion on the first stimulus package. They're talking about possibly over $3 trillion on the next stimulus package, and they're going to cut payroll taxes. So am I the only one who thinks that taxes are just going to go through the roof next year? Because at some point, they're going to need to get something back. They can't just keep spending trillions and trillions of dollars every year with no repercussions. I mean, if they could do that, then great. Give me $10 million. I'd be thrilled to death. Call that good. But pretty soon they're going to need to make their money back, and it's going to be through higher taxes. So cutting taxes this year, once again, it's like a butterfly band-aid on a gunshot wound. It's not really going to help. Some people might make $100 more a month or $50 more a week or something like that, and it's going to help the teeniest, tiniest bit. And then next year is going to come, and they're probably going to jack the taxes up through the roof if everything goes back to normal by then. And it's really not going to help. It's probably going to make things worse when the government has less money than they expected this year. And keep in mind during all of this that all of these representatives in Congress and senators and all of these government employees that are on salary, their pay hasn't changed because they're salaried, and also they're the last people that they're going to stop paying. So all these congressmen, senators, even the president, they're getting paid. Everything is covered. They don't have to worry about anything. It doesn't matter to them whether or not the economy keeps going because they're getting paid all the time. They don't need the $1,200 because that $174,000 that every representative makes, they're still getting paid. They still made all their money this month. They still got their $14,500 monthly salary check, and they're still getting a lot of their living expenses, travel expenses. A lot of that is all still paid for. Nothing has changed for them. So they have no incentive to get things back up and running when life hasn't changed for any of these people. No one lost their job. No one's losing income. Nothing has really changed. So why would they really be all that concerned? They're sitting back in the evening, not thinking about it. They do their daily work, and then they go home and they don't even bother thinking about it because it really doesn't affect them at all. And on the subject of daily work that those representatives do, you might be surprised at how some of them don't even actually do their full job. Here on govtrack.us, they've got the list of the most absent voters in legislation. So the most absent was Senator Robert Mendez, Democrat from New Jersey. Missed 14% of the votes during the 115th Congress. He literally only did 86% of his job. And then number 2 is Tammy Duckworth from Illinois, 12.9% absent on votes. And number 3 is Senator John Isaacson from Georgia. So literally these people are doing less than 90% of their job. How many of you out there would get fired if you did 90% of your job or 86% of your job? If you did 86% of your job and you worked for me, I would fire you, and I would expect to get fired. Even our good old buddy down here, Ted Cruz, I remember he ran his mouth constantly. Absent, he's number 10 on the most absent. He missed 5.3% of the votes. And part of my problem with this is why? Why did you miss the vote at all? Missing 1 or 2 votes, not percent, but votes, is one thing if you're like sick and maybe you couldn't get there or something along the lines there. That's kind of one thing. But missing votes when it's literally your job to vote, that makes you kind of crappy at your job. Oh, wait, here we go. Lindsey Graham, I know he runs his mouth constantly on Fox News. He's number 7 on the most absent. Let's see, just for curiosity, where is AOC? So I found Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on a different page. It's still on govtrack.us, but it's just in a different spot. But at least she only missed 0.6 of the votes that she was supposed to be at, which was 5 out of 879. So that could have easily been some medical thing or whoever, some other reason. So 5 out of 900 isn't really all that bad. That's a whole lot better than some of these other ones that are 14%. So the actual numbers on the number 1 useless senator, Bob Mendez from New Jersey, his 2018 report card missed 14%. That's 84 of 599 votes. That's kind of useless. Oh, and here's a really fun one. We got everyone's favorite Bernie Sanders. So his voting record on here goes back to 2007, just on their little chart. And it was actually doing pretty good, all the way up till January through March 2011. Missed 8.7%, and then he was doing pretty good again. November to December 2012 missed 10%. This one's my favorite. January to March 2016 missed 97.4% of the votes. And then April through June missed 84.8% of all the votes. And then this one's my favorite. October to December 2019 missed 100%. So half the time Bernie is literally not doing his job at all if he's missing 80 to 100% of the votes in some of these different sessions. And yet his total net worth is still close to $2 million, and he owns 3 houses valued at almost $1.5 million between the 3 of them, for not doing his job at all for the most part, lately anyway. And even a lot of his previous votes, when he showed up for the vote, it was a roll call thing, and he still didn't actually vote on a lot of stuff. So it's not like he was doing his job at all for the most part anyway. So pretty much all of this really just goes to show that none of these politicians and representatives of this country are in touch with what the average person has to deal with on an income to cost of living type level at any point. And it's just kind of ridiculous. And Trump is definitely not the people's president or something like that. It's not like he's ever been in the situation that most people are, working 9 to 5. He got I believe it was $1 million loan from his dad to start his own thing, and he built his little empire, as they call it. But in all reality, the vast majority of what he has done is make deals in Hollywood, and he made a TV show. That's where a good portion of his wealth came from. There's plenty of other multi-billion-dollar construction companies out there owned by one person. I've done work on when I was in the metal industry for billionaires that built entire sections of entire cities. There was one guy that I worked for, I worked on a project that he owned anyway. I didn't work for him, but he basically built all of downtown Nashville. Pretty much everything new in Nashville, it was basically one guy that owned all of it because he was a multi-billionaire. And in all honesty, that guy is probably more in touch with the average person than Trump is, because I don't even know the guy's name. All I know is that it was one dude that owned everything, and he's probably never even been, well, I'm sure he's been to Hollywood, but he's most likely never made a TV show. He's probably never been involved in any of that stuff. He might have actually worked for some of his stuff. Making all your money, if you want to count people as being successful at being a billionaire, Tom Cruise is, I believe, close to a billionaire. All he does is make movies. That basically, in my opinion, is the exact same thing that Trump did. He did some other stuff, but it's not like he was actually out there building the houses. So he's really not the people's president or whatever. He's just, in all reality, he's just another filthy rich dude who pretty much bought his way into politics like all these other people. It's not like any of these people have really worked for much of anything in their life like the average person like you and me have done. They probably haven't had a 9 to 5, or at least it wasn't a 9 to 5 that they didn't enjoy. They most likely were working 9 to 5 in a cush office doing something relatively easy. But a long, long time ago, it was actually back in more like the 1800s and back even far mid to early 1800s, all these politicians were per diem at the best. Sometimes, I believe there was a point where they weren't even paid. I actually have it pulled up right here on Senate.gov again. They've got the senator's salaries from 1789 to present. So 1789 to 1815, it was $6 per diem. So they only got paid when they showed up to do their job, which obviously, smaller population, $6 back in the 1700s was obviously a lot more money and everything. But why do we need to pay these people 365 days a year when in all reality they're not even doing anything a good portion of the time? They write their bills, which half the time is written by someone else. The stuff that they're doing, it's like, why do we pay you all year round when some of them don't even show up to vote? They don't actually vote, because you can vote absent and vote. Basically, you don't vote yes or no. You can just not vote, essentially. So you can not do your job, and we're still paying you $174,000 a year from taxpayer money, and we're flying you all around the country. It's like, why don't we just pay them per diem, or just cover the expenses and then make it a volunteer thing? If you want to be a senator and it's volunteer, we're going to get a whole lot more done if it goes back to being a volunteer position, because then you're only going to get people who are doing it because they want to do it. Right now, in all reality, I mean, perfect example is the fact that AOC was a bartender and now she's in the government and she's making laws and voting on important things. I mean, that was probably the biggest pay raise she's ever going to see, from going from a bartender in New York to making $175,000 a year to do nothing and getting flown all over the country. You're not really getting the best and brightest in government. You're getting whoever is smart enough to figure out how to get elected and then get paid to sit on their butt and do nothing for the next 2 to 4 years, depending on their term. If it went back to being just covering expenses, like you need to go to Washington, D.C. or whatever, yes, there's a fund that pays for that. And maybe you get first class or business class or whatever, but no private jets, no paying for everything else that you do throughout the year and spending hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars per representative all year round, when we don't need that. If they really wanted to help people and do something for the country, it would be volunteer or a significantly lower per diem thing, and they'll just have to go get a job like everyone else on the outside. And maybe if they're working 9 to 5 and they get their weekends off or whatever to go vote and do things like that, maybe they'll understand the difference in making $175,000 salary to do your job or not, because you're going to get paid one way or the other for your term. Or maybe, the difference between that and getting paid $20 an hour to, work at a mechanic shop, weld, do an actual physical job. Maybe things would change if it was a volunteer position again. But thanks for listening to the podcast. This was episode 2. If you like this, you can check out episode 1. Make sure to check us out on Facebook. We're on Twitter, Instagram, Podbean, and it'll be on YouTube. Let your friends know to let us know what you think, if you liked it, and any topics that you might want to hear some research, and see if there's something you want to know. Send us a message. We'll see about doing some research on it and getting you an episode with information. Thanks, and talk to you next time.